It's safe to say that FNAF is allergic to giving definitive answers. Scott hates messing with the lore, preferring to leave options open for fans to interpret or later works to explore. The most important characters are usually given the least amount of detail in supplementary works, lest they ruin someone else's headcanon. At best, we tend to get parallels. Heck, Vanessa doesn't show up in a single book. The movies were an opportunity to give us a definitive characterization. And while they do incorporate characters from the games, they are radically different. But I think this may actually be deliberate. They are so different that they're almost opposites. Once I realized that, it became a lot more enjoyable and a lot more interesting. In some sense, it's Scott's way of providing a clue towards their game counterparts. You simply have to take their opposites. Let's look at the first movie before we get into the sequel. Our main characters are Mike Schmidt, who shares his name with the player in FNAF 1, and his little sister Abby. Mike is plagued by guilt over the disappearance of his little brother Garrett when he should have been watching him, and he relives this event every night in his dreams. We also meet a cop named Vanessa who is connected to Freddy's, and we later learn that she is the daughter of the murderer William Afton, the only character who stays relatively consistent throughout the games, books, and movies. Right away, there are some clear parallels. Mike Schmidt is obviously, well, Mike Schmidt, who most people agree is a fake name for Michael Afton, another of William's children. In the games, Michael Afton is plagued by nightmares after accidentally causing the death of his brother, the crying child. This would make Garrett a clear stand-in for the crying child, the lost sibling. Although, him getting kidnapped first and the "come find me" at the end of the first movie made many people believe that he was a Charlie stand-in who had possessed the puppet. And then there's Abby, who completes our Afton children stand-ins. Abby is apparently an old-timey name for Elizabeth, and it's literally an anagram of baby, the animatronic she possesses. Not to mention that the Ella Springlock suit that she's almost stuffed in heavily resembles Baby. Yet despite this family of three representing Afton's kids, his only child in the first movie is Vanessa. This led to a popular theory that Mike's father in the movie was Henry, who, at least in the games, had one daughter. This would mean that William and Henry had essentially swapped families. Not in universe, of course, but to play into the opposite characterization idea. I do think this was probably the theme they had in mind, even if Henry wasn't meant to literally be the dad, but the sequel makes all of this much messier. Vanessa is weird. She shares her name with the security guard from Security Breach, which takes place decades after the movie. We do know the actress was chosen specifically to look like her, so the reference is more than just a name. In the games, Vanessa is possessed by Glitchtrap, who is either the virtual ghost of William Afton or the mimic pretending to be him. It's functionally the same either way, and probably a little of both. Regardless, Glitchtrap turns her into Vanny, his reluctant follower. She lives up to that title here, as she's been abused by him since childhood enough that she uses her status as a cop to cover up his crimes. His abuse towards her also parallels his treatment of Elizabeth as Baby in the Fourth Closet, who works for him in a desperate bid for his approval. The role of Mike Afton from the games has therefore seemingly been split between Mike Schmidt, as the protagonist, and Vanessa, as William's child who is uncomfortable with what he's doing but hesitant to stop it. The weird thing is that there's some indication that William Afton may actually be her dad in the games too, which is impossible from a timeline sense, although it was enough to make the twist predictable before the movie came out. Her dad was apparently named Bill A, which is pretty obviously short for William Afton. Maybe Glitchtrap just changed her files to be more possessive, but it's definitely a weird thread. The rest of the characters in the movie have much simpler inspirations. William Afton is basically unchanged, though he does take the role of phone guy for the movie as a nod to MatPat's old theory. He uses a fake name like in the Silver Eyes, and the animatronics even drag him away just like in the book. Another similarity with the books is Mike's Aunt Jane, who is at least named after Charlie's Aunt Jen. Mike has a friend named Jeremiah, likely a reference to Jeremy, probably Jeremy Fitzgerald specifically, though the name shows up almost as much as Mike. Finally, the blonde boy inside Golden Freddy is likely the vengeful spirit Cassidy, the one you should not have killed from Ultimate Custom Night. He's a lot more aggressive than the other ghosts, and makes it his mission to hold on to Afton after learning his true nature. He mellows out by the time of the sequel, acting more like game fan and Charlie than anything. The only other character of note is the babysitter, Max, one of the more sympathetic deaths. She seems to become Shadow Freddy of all things, based on the suit that she was stuffed in, the silhouette when she's bitten in half, and the ghost even saying, "Follow me," like in the FNAF 3 minigames and books. This might be a nod to the old, the shadows are the benevolent ghosts of spring-locked employees theory. I wouldn't be surprised if she shows up in FNAF 3 to guide Mike to William. Now on to the sequel, where these characters get a lot messier. Mike and Abby stay the same, for better or for worse. And Garrett's basically gone from the story, so I guess he's even more like the crying child than I thought. Much like how the first movie reused the scene of the animatronics dragging Springtrapped William away from the first novel, and the picture memory thing from the fourth closet, this movie draws some inspiration from the second novel, The Twisted Ones. The classic animatronics dismantling the toy animatronics is very reminiscent of when they dismantled the twisted animatronics. Both sets were under the control of an Afton. Now let's get on to the new characters this movie brings in. Henry seems to be ripped straight out of the games, even pulling a
leaving dead space
audio recording in the post-credits. His line of, "It's so easy to become so blinded by ambition that even with the best of intentions you don't see the devil sitting right beside you," is consistent with him sitting around doing nothing while Afton was on his killing spree. In the games, he describes it as a wound first inflicted on me, but one that I let bleed out onto others. As in both FNAF 6 and here, he knows that his daughter, Charlie, was merely the first in a long line of Afton's victims. And that brings me to Charlie.
Oh, Charlotte.
A massive criticism with this movie has been how differently Charlotte is portrayed here. Much like in the games, she possesses the puppet, or the marionette as this movie calls it. The puppet is my and many other people's favorite animatronic, and one that Scott seems reluctant to use very often lest he go against the common fanon for her. Because she does have a compelling game characterization, if it's true to fanon. The puppet gave life to the other animatronics, binding their spirits to the suits so that they can seek revenge on their killer and find peace. This was seemingly not necessary for the ghost to possess the animatronics in the books or the movies, however, as the puppet does not exist in the former and was trapped in a different location in the latter. Beyond giving them life, the puppet seems to act as a guardian to the animatronics and an active pursuer of William, hunting him down in FNAF 3 and enlisting Freddy to try to stop the purple guy in one of the FNAF 2 minigames. As she says in Ultimate Custom Night,
"The others are under my protection."
She also actively sets up Happiest Day to put the spirits to rest. The books show that Charlie was very intelligent, and the puppet is indeed smarter than the other animatronics. Phone Guy says that the puppet is always thinking, and in Ultimate Custom Night, she taunts William by saying,
"I recognize you, but I'm not afraid of you. Not anymore.
and
The others are like animals, but I am very aware."
now let's compare this to her portrayal in the movie. Charlie does show her protective side. Instead of being murdered in a back alley by Afton after some kids lock her out, like in the games, or kidnapped from a closet, like in the books, here she dies saving another child from Afton. Henry lamented in FNAF 6 that he was sorry that nobody was there to lift you in their arms the way you carried so many in yours. And we see this literally, in the way she carries the child she saved, and then poetically, in the way the puppet lifts up her body in the Pieta pose. The puppet looks almost judgmental as it stares at the parents, and for good reason. Charlie had begged the adults to help, but they ignored her. She took matters into her own hands and paid the price, a price she was determined to reap in return. Once she dies, Charlotte acts far more like the vengeful spirit from Ultimate Custom Night than the protective puppet paragon the fanbase knew her as. Vanessa says that Charlie is locked into the last emotion she felt before death, rage. She doesn't blame William for her death, she blames the parents who let her die. But rather than targeting the parents who were there that day, or her own absentee father, a trait that's consistent in the books, movies, and games, her plan is to go on a general parent-killing spree.
You left me to die.
What? What do we do?
All of you did.
Not only is this senselessly vengeful, but it's far from how the fandom portrays her. But is it really different from her canon personality? In the games, the puppet still attacks the security guard, so she's probably just as prone to mistaking all adults for Afton as the other ghosts. She's so aggressive that Henry needs to lure her into Lefty and burn her with everyone else, because he knows she won't stop seeking justice otherwise. She's more coherent than the other animatronics, but she's probably not quite as aware as she thinks she is. In the movie, despite her rageful state, she's still the smartest and most aware ghost, except for perhaps Golden Freddy. She's notably the only spirit who is referred to by her name rather than her vessel. I'm not even sure the other ghosts remember their names. The other ghosts also seem to have taken on characteristics of their animatronics in their outfits. Charlotte has black and white stripes on her shirt, but she was already wearing that when she died, so that's either a wink from the filmmakers or a testament to how much she already liked the puppet. Her only ghostly characteristic is the tear stains. Well, they seem to have come from the puppet in this case. In the games, it was her tears that stained the puppet mask only after her death. The other kids don't remember who they are, or how or why they died. Charlie knows who she is, she's outraged at her death, and she remembers Vanessa. She lifts one of her lines directly from Ultimate Custom Night, saying,
I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way.
Obviously, this wasn't directed at Vanessa and UCN, but it was always a fascinating line. By all accounts, she hates William and needs him to die so the other ghosts can move on. So I think she was actually talking to the vengeful spirit, imploring them to leave the demon to his demons. Charlotte's other motivation in the movie is interesting. Apparently, the puppet needs to possess humans in order to get around. Many people found this rather underwhelming, but I think it was a necessary evil. It's always been kind of ambiguous how the puppet actually moves. It's on strings when it comes out of its box, but it looks like it's more felt than sturdy metal. Help Wanted shows it awkwardly lurching around, but that's an in-universe video game. Most fan animations just show the puppet kind of flying around since it's already the most supernatural animatronic after Golden Freddy anyway. Since the movie prefers practical effects over fully CGI animatronics, they opted to just have possessed humans with face paint and digital touch-ups to circumvent the issue entirely. I get it. I wish the physical puppet had more screen time, but this was ultimately the best decision. While the possession thing does also seem kind of random, it's not actually that implausible. We already know the puppet has enough mastery over souls to bind the ghost to the animatronics, so who's to say that it can't also replace somebody's soul with its own? Abby even speaks to the Phas Talker while she's displaced by the puppet possessing her body.
Charlotte?
No, silly. It's me, Abby.
People also think that Charlie's goal of possessing Abby was weird and out of character, but it makes sense. For all of Charlie's violence in the movie, she does stick to a certain moral code. When she threatens Abby, Vanessa asserts that Charlie would never hurt a child, to which Charlie merely asks if Vanessa is willing to take that chance. She ultimately can't bring herself to call Charlie's bluff. Later in the movie, a puppet-possessed toy Bonnie is friendly with a child even as he prepares to kill the parent, out of a misguided belief that this is what's best for the child.
Your mom doesn't care about you.
Just stop.
She only thinks about herself. Parents are all the same.
Finally, when Charlie's forced out of Abby, she leaves Abby alive, whereas Lisa's possession was fatal. Charlie wanted the chance to live on as a little girl again, especially one that she had bonded with. But at the end of the movie, she settles for possessing her other friend, Vanessa. Given the fact that this happens as Vanessa reaches her lowest point, I imagine this is going to lead to her becoming Vanny in the third movie. Charlie fusing with an Elizabeth standing could also mirror her fate at the end of the fourth closet. And interestingly, the puppet seems to be paralleling Ennard here by possessing one of the Afton children. And speaking of the Afton children, we have the character whose leaked presence in the movie sent the fanbase into enough of a stir for Scott to personally try to put out the flames. Michael Afton. It is very, very weird to have him in the movie when we already have Mike Schmidt and Vanessa representing the two halves of his character. But that's the thing. Michael's entire character is canon. Would you believe that this
I'm Michael. Michael Afton.
is the very first time in the franchise that the name Michael Afton is uttered? Sure, we have him say,
Father, it's me, Michael.
to William Afton, so it's not a hard assumption to make, but it was very conspicuous. The common fan interpretation of Michael Afton is that he's the protagonist of every game. His bullying goes too far when he accidentally kills his brother in FNAF 4, setting him down a path of redemption. He uses the fake names Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith in the first two games, either working for his father or tracking him down. He's definitely set on revenge after William leads him to a death trap in Sister Location. He tries to burn Springtrap in FNAF 3, and by FNAF 6 he's a zombie that wants to stop his father and lay everyone, himself included, to rest. It's a nice redemption story. His role in the first two games, if that was ever really him, was always shaky at best. Was he hunting his father by then, or was he William's puppet, even if reluctantly? Some scrapped content in the Into the Pit game would have had a Vanny, implying William had an accomplice. It would be especially ironic given their swapped roles in the movie. Many people dislike how overtly villainous he is in the movie. He seems to be manipulating Charlie in the same way that William did the other five ghosts. He's probably seeking his father's approval like Elizabeth in the fourth closet, and I bet he turns on him at the end. Michael's character has always been intentionally obscured. It's pretty glaring in the official character encyclopedia, where he's completely absent. Meanwhile, even the weird doll heads in Sister Location get entries. What's especially interesting is that there is an official work that presents Michael and the puppet in their preferred interpretations, and it's explicitly non-canon. The Felix the Shark book features 3 scrapped Fazbear Fright stories. One of them, You're the Band, is a fan favorite, with many questioning why it was scrapped. It features a mother trying to figure out what's wrong with her son, who's been possessed by Freddy's spirit, basically the only other instance of human possession in this franchise. After her possessed son disappears, she's confronted by a suspicious young adult named Mike, who works as a security guard at Freddy's. No last name, of course, but he seems to know a lot more than Mike Schmidt would if he was truly just a security guard. Mike brings her to Freddy's so that she can be reunited with her child. However, when they enter the building, they're ensnared in the puppet's tentacles. This is also the only time the puppet shows up in any of the 36 Fazbear Fright stories, aside from taking down Afton and the Stitch Raid Stingers. After they convince the puppet that they just want to help out the little boy, the puppet releases them. This aligns with the puppet's popular interpretation as both a guardian of the animatronics and a protector of children. So why was this story scrapped? Because it made everything too explicit. With the movies, the characters are so different that it's easier to just say their canon personalities are the exact opposite of what we see on the big screen. And while I would have loved to see the fan interpretation of the Guardian puppet, I'm not gonna lie, Vengeful Charlie is pretty sick, and Piper Rubio killed it as the Avionette. So where do I think the third movie will go from here? Well, it'll probably be based on a mixture of FNAF 3 and FNAF 6. The puppet will probably get lured into Lefty by her father. What I'm really concerned about is the fact that it will probably draw inspiration from the fourth closet. Vanessa has only had loose parallels with Book Charlie so far. At least dating someone who shares a name with your brother isn't as bad as dating someone who looks like your father, like Charlie did. But the most controversial element of the novels is the whole Charlie bot thing. And I'm starting to wonder if they're building up to that twist with Vanessa. We see a flashback of young Vanessa encountering none other than Circus Baby. Considering what happened to Elizabeth, what if Vanessa was killed by Baby and rebuilt by William? Might also explain why William clearly favored Vanessa over Michael, and what he means when he says she has a purpose. So yes, the FNAF movies are kind of a mess. But I love them. It wouldn't be FNAF if the supplementary materials weren't throwing the basic assumptions of the fanbase into chaos and stirring debates about parallels and canonicity. I look forward to FNAF 3, where Garrett will team up with DJ Music Man to drown Springtrap in Fazgoo and set him on fire for the 7th time.